guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here, my name is Grace and today, as you can see by the title, this video is a little bit different to what I've usually been uploading. This video is going to be a sit down chatty video and it's going to be me explaining about my experience through scoliosis and the struggles that I've been through and things like that with it, the operation, procedure and things like that. The reason I'm making this video is I actually thought about doing this anyway, just to put out my experiences to see if it can help anyone else, as when I went through it I was actually quite surprised. There was a lot of videos in terms of health officials pages and things like that, but there was no one actually is your view as like a normal, just day-to-day person of like my story, like sharing their experiences and stuff on YouTube. So I personally would have thought it would have been a lot better for me if I had that. I was quite lucky enough to have known someone very close to my family who's went through the same procedure a year before I did. So if I had any questions I could always ring him, speak to him. Get yourself a cup of tea because it's going to be a long one. And let's get into the video. Throughout this video I will be inserting photos and things like that. Some of them not so much graphic, but some of them are with my scar and things that are quite raw still. So if you don't like that, I will say before I show it up so you can skip things like that, but it is what it is. So first off, I'm going to split the video into about like 4 different parts. So this section is going to be about like how I found out the transfer from doctors and then to the hospital, and then the procedure that I was going to have. So this video for me is, like I've said earlier, is quite important for me to make, because I just feel like if my experience and how I felt and how I got over that can help other people, then even if it just helps one person, I'll be chuffed with that. So how I found out. So scoliosis, for anyone who doesn't know, is curvature of the spine. They don't have an actual reason as to why it occurred. However, when I went to the doctor and was referred, they said to me that it was through my growth spurt. I am quite tall, I'm 6'1", and it's more common in slim, tall girls. However, doesn't mean that it can't happen to boys, things like that. Like I said, I did know someone who is close to my family who had it and he was a boy. When the first time I found it was, I danced a lot. I did contemporary style dance, which is a lot of floor work and things like that. So I came back one night and my back, one side of my back I was in a lot of pain, kind of like if you pull a muscle and things like that. So I went to my mum and said to her, look, I'm getting this pain, and obviously through dance I always get injuries and things like that. So my mum thought it was just a pulled muscle, but said to just keep an eye on it. 2 weeks had passed, things like that, and I was just getting aches, and the left side of my back was swelled. However, it didn't go, and then this was the summer of 2017. So I was 15 at this time, and it was my prom, and I wore a backless dress, and at that point I didn't know about the scoliosis. I didn't know that I had it, I didn't notice it from looking, you couldn't visually see it. However, after prom, it was about 6 months later, I was still getting this pain, but I did ignore it. And this is also why I'm making this video. Like, if you feel in yourself that something's wrong, usually there is. I did have a feeling that something went right, but I think sometimes you do have that thing where you're a bit scared to go and get it sorted because you're worried about what it could be. About 5 to 6 months later, I wanted to sell my prom dress, and this girl who was interested wanted to see more up-to-date photos, so I put the dress on and my mum took a photo of the back, and that is when I realised something was bad. This photo right here, this is the photo that was taken, and as you can see quite visibly, you can actually see the motion in which my back curves. This obviously was quite emotional for me to see because I thought, what's wrong with my back? So at this point my mum thought it was just like the way she took the photo and things like that, so I actually got one to press onto my back and it was a clear S shape. So from this we run doctors, got a doctor's appointment. After I'd been to the doctors, they said that it could be mild scoliosis, and that is when they told me about what it is and things like that, and that I had to be referred. So I was to Sheffield Hospital, and they have an orthopaedic clinic and they actually have their own scoliosis ward. The first time I went, I had x-rays. They would send them back to my GP and I'd get a phone call to speak about the next step. So I got that phone call and I went to the doctors and their computers were down. And I'll never forget this because when we went in, the doctor said to me that there was nothing to worry about. There was a slight curve, however, they are going to refer me again back to Sheffield to speak to a specialist. However, there's nothing to worry about. So at this point, I'd not seen my back on an x-ray. So I'd say 6 weeks later, I got the letter through, the date, and I went to Sheffield. When I went to Sheffield, I had to have another x-ray. With these x-rays, from my experience, they took one side on and then up at the side as well, where you had to put your hands up so they could get a clear picture of your back. When I went in, the specialist, he had an x-ray up on the screen, and he was like, "Oh hi Grace," like welcoming me and my mum, and my mum went, "Is that Grace's back?" And we thought it was from his previous patient, and it wasn't a slight curve. This is what it was. And so obviously from what the doctors told us, we realised from seeing it that it was a little bit more to worry about. So he explained my curvature, and so at this age I was 16, and I didn't know what to think. Part of me was thinking as well, like, what's going to happen? Will I, like, and it seems drastic, but when you're in that moment you think, well, will I end up in a wheelchair? Will it just progressively keep going? So that first time I saw the doctor, it was quite a big shock. So for the next 6 months I was under a specialist, and they had to see the progression of the curve to see if I'd stopped growing. The reason why they had to do this is they can't operate if they think you're still growing, like if they've still got a lot of growing to do. Usually if you're younger and you're watching this, you may be offered a back brace. My scoliosis was too far ahead. The first appointment when I went, I think my curvature was 54 degrees. They operate at anything over 57, I want to say. So I had to go back in 6 months, then a year, and then they'd tell me. So in this whole time, I was doing my A-levels, I was at college, and I just had to wait. It was just a waiting game. In terms of pain, sports and things like that, it started to hurt after. It wasn't so much agony pain, it was like an ache. I just felt like I just wanted my back to be stretched. Personally, if I was to speak from a perspective of how I dealt with it, in that moment I was unsure what was going to happen anyway. It was just 6 months, then we'll speak about it, 6 months, then we'll speak about it. So I did kind of just block it out, and it was just a day-to-day thing. Anyway, so 6 months had passed, and I went, and within 6 months it went 4 degrees to 58. That is quite a big jump for 6 months. Then after that, and he sat me down, and the doctor said that they might, more than likely, will have to operate. So anyone of a young age, if someone turns around and say they may need to operate, it is scary, because you think about, and especially on your back, I was mainly thinking, like, what if I end up in a wheelchair? What if I end up paralysed and things like that? And they were some risks that was with the operation. When I went to the doctors and he said that, if my options were, if to have the operation. If I wasn't to have that, my back could progressively get worse and it would start to be more visible and I would slowly become more hunched over. At this point in certain tops that I'd wear, it was visible as the way in which my curve went, it went like this. So the right hand side of the curve started to slowly go under my right shoulder blade. So my shoulder blade would stick out more and things like that. And it was becoming a bit of a draining thing. Probably if people didn't know, like my friends and stuff, it was slowly, they may not have noticed in the beginning, but it was slowly becoming a thing where I felt that you could notice it. I was quite a confident individual. I didn't let it really affect me in any way. My boyfriend at the time was very supportive in everything. However, when I believed you could see it, that's when I struggled a bit. So that actual operation that the specialist wanted me to have was called a spinal fusion operation. So this is a bit graphic, but what they wanted to do is reconstruct my back with 2 metal rods, screws to realign my back. I was just thinking, if I leave it, it will get worse, and even though the scary feeling of having an operation, in the long run it will be the best thing for me. So yeah, end of the conversation, I said I'll have it and I want it. In terms of family, if you're going through this or you know someone, be there as a support system. However, they need to make the final decision of what they want to do. From my experience, I feel like my mum and my family around me were quite scared and apprehensive, which is fair enough when our loved ones would be going under the operation table for quite a big operation. However, for selfish reasons, you need to think about what you want in your health. So at the end of the conversation with the specialist, I said, yeah, I'll have it. He gave me some leaflets and things like that to read up on it, and he said it is now a waiting game. So after I had said yes to the operation, he said, would you like to come back in 3 months and then we'll put you on the waiting list, just because I was going to university the following year. So this was summer of 2018. So I was going to university in 2019, and if I got put on the waiting list, it was 6-month waiting. If I was to be put on it then, I would not be able to go started university, as it would have clashed. And also, the way it would have been the recovery period for university, so when I would be able to have the operation, it would have been around May time, and I would have missed out on my A-levels, which I didn't want to do. I just didn't. So he told me to come back in 4 months and I'd have more x-rays. I had to have MRI scans and things like that before I had the operation. So then he'd be able to say, right, yeah, green or go, we'll put you on the list. And it'd be ready for after my A-level. 3 months later, he'd scheduled me in for an MRI scan, and I'm unsure whether this is a procedure that they have to do all the time with everyone, with every patient. However, for me, he knew from my x-rays that I was not born with it. So they had to check as to whether it was scoliosis, what they think, or whether there was a tumour. Because of the swelling on the side of my back, they just wanted to rule everything out and have that done. So, the MRI scan. I've got to say, I'd say that is close to the worst thing that I went through other than the recovery. Just because if no one's had anything, you need to go in with an open mind. Everyone's different. I don't like being in a confined space, and I suffer from anxiety, so I never had one. I didn't look, I didn't Google anything, because usually that can scare you even more. And I went in, you go in, you lie down, they put a mask over your head which has a mirror at the top, so if you open your eyes you can see the people in the office. They gave like a silicone ball thing to press if you want to stop the scan, and then when you are all ready, the machine takes you in and moves about a bit. The noise is really loud. I had to wear earbuds and headphones and the head thing. I was laid like that and you're not allowed to move, and due to mine being a full back MRI scan, I was in there for 50 minutes, and the amount of times I was like, I'm gonna just press this ball, because I just thought I couldn't do it. And if anyone else suffers from anxiety and things like that, the worst thing is when you've got that feeling, you're just like, I wanna go out, I don't want to experience that. But all you've got to think, if you come to a point and you're like, I don't want to do this, I knew that if I pressed that ball, I would have had to reschedule this whole MRI scan and have to do it all again. And so I managed to do it. I lived, I didn't die. It weren't the nicest thing I've ever had done. So thank God when the MRI scan came back, that was all clear. When I went back and he gave me the MRI results and said that everything was fine, all clear, he said, so are you ready for me to put you on the list? And I said, yeah, why not? So I got put on the waiting list for this operation, and they said that they would be in touch with me for my pre-op and things like that. So I'd started university, this was September, and it was November time. I got a phone call and they said that they have a cancellation on for the operation and whether I wanted it, and it was in 3 weeks from that date. So I got the phone call about the 18th of November and the operation was the 3rd of December 2019. So at this point I was 18 years old. So this has been a 3-year process, and I can remember I'd just gone shopping with my nan and I got the phone call and I was like, yeah, I'll have it, yeah, no worries. Ended the phone call, and it was at that moment, for so many years I've just been saying, oh, it's next year, oh, it's next year, oh, my operation's in like 6 months. So for it to be round the corner, that's when it hit me. I had assignments due in for uni and things like that. The thing that helped me through it was friends and family. Personally, I prefer to speak to my friends about stuff like that, just because at that time I didn't want to worry my mum even more. I felt like I had to be brave. So the friends that I had that I had around me at that time I couldn't have asked for better support. When I got that phone call, the lady said to me over the phone that she will book me in for my pre-op, which was in 5 days from the phone call. So the following Wednesday I had to go in for my pre-op, so I had to go to Sheffield, and a pre-operation is where they take your bloods, things like that, find out if you're allergic to anything, see if you've had operations previously, things like that. I had not. I had to have my heart checked, I had to have a breathing test, I had my bloods taken because I had to, obviously in case I had to have a blood transfusion during the operation. And after that I thought, it's happening. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, you have them worries as to whether, like, what, it seems daft looking now I'm on the other side, but you do think, like, what if, like, I die, or like I said, what if I end up paralysed? That, I personally, when you say it that drastic, it does, but when you realise about what I actually had done, it could happen, it could, and it was part of the risks that my specialist explained to me. It's like there's a risk of death, there is a risk of paralysis and things like that. So when someone's reading that out to you and you sign, it's like, that's alright. It's a bit of a knock. So before I got this phone call, actually I've just missed this out, before I got that phone call I was suffering from a lot of discomfort. My spine had gone curved that much. By the last time I had my last x-ray before my operation, I now have 2 curves. So the curving, which was the big curve to the left of my back, had now created a curve on the bottom. So instead of going like straight and then a curve, my back had to do that to compensate. As you can tell on the x-ray that I showed you earlier, which I've inserted here as well. So before I got that phone call, I was suffering from a lot of discomfort. So when I was at university, I took a photo of my back in the mirror to see if I could visually see any difference in my back, and this is what I saw. So as you can see off that photo, on the right hand side, that lump underneath my shoulder blade was in fact my spine, and I didn't know, I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. Like, at first I was like, what's that? So I had to put the camera back up and then feel as I could see, and I realised it was my spine. So when I did get that phone call, I felt like I always go by that everything happens for a reason, and if I had not had that then, I would not have been able to have it even now because of the coronavirus and things like that. It would have just been cancelled. So I do feel like it happened for a reason. So now I am going to be speaking about the operation itself, the day of the operation, how long I was in hospital and things like that. So I went into the hospital, and on the morning at 7 AM I had to check in and then wait in a waiting room, and then they took you through to this ward where you got your what are they called, the clothes that you've got to put on, the robes and stuff. And then the specialist that I spoke to was actually the person who was doing my operation, and he just re-explained what they were going to do. So this operation was a 7-hour long surgery under general anaesthetic. However, there was also an hour which was prep. I didn't realise this until the day of, but to monitor the nerves, they put acupuncture needles all over my body, so that they would be able to monitor it, and that took an hour. So I was under general anaesthetic whilst that was happening before they even started. The morning of, I actually felt quite calm. Obviously I was nervous, but I think the adrenaline that you're having is just like, meh. And like I said, I was so used to saying, oh, it's next year, it's next year. So for that day to have actually come, it was a bit of a, oh, alright, well, it's here now. So I also spoke to the anaesthetist, and he explained my dosage and just things like what will happen. One thing that he said, which I think is so weird, he said that obviously I wouldn't be able to remember it, but whilst I was under the general anaesthetic, they said that he may say to me whilst I'm in surgery, Grace, move your feet. And I wouldn't have been able to remember that when I woke up, but it's so they can check my nerves. So it's like they spoke to me when I was asleep. It was so weird. After I had spoken to him, it had got to about 10:15 and they said that they were ready for me in theatre. This was when it got hard. So it wasn't so much when I had to say bye to my mum and my dad and my stepdad, it was I had to walk into the room where they give you the general anaesthetic, and this room was right next to the operating room. And in fact, when I was on the bed, I could see the operating theatre with the doors. I'm not even kidding, at that moment I pretty much shit myself. I thought, this is happening now and there's no way. Like, it was at that point I realised this is happening, I can't speak. So I sat down on the bed and in the operating room and things like that, it makes you think. I actually thought I'm going to be in there with my back open in a minute, and that sounds so weird to put it like that, but that's what happened. She looked at me and she was like, Grace, you need to calm down. I'm going to give you something to make you calm down. And from that moment I cannot remember anything. So from my experience, I think she just told me that she would give me something to calm down. Because usually they count back or something, that's what I got told, because I've never had an operation before other than that. For the first night I was in the intensive care bit. A cannula in this hand for my fluids and things. I had another one in this hand for my painkillers. I had one in my arm for my bloods. So I was hooked up to about 3 drips. In all honesty, I can't remember anything. I can remember bits, it was a bit patchy, but I was on a drug called Oxidide, which is stronger than morphine, and I can remember I had a button, and when it lit like green I could press it, but it could only let me press it 3 times, and on the 3rd one it just knocked me out. So after the 2nd day I got transferred to another ward. However, I was lucky I had my own room, and this is when I could start remembering things. However, when it got to about the 3rd day, when I was pressing the button for my painkillers, I was becoming more aware of drifting off. So I could feel the effect of the drug more, and I didn't like it. It really freaked me. So I asked if I could come off that, and I wanted to just be put on tablets. The worst part for me about when I was in hospital was I'm quite independent, and I had to have people help to wash me, even down to washing my face, brushing my teeth. Especially the first few days, like I just couldn't do anything. But getting into a bit where I had to be catheterised, which is where you have a tube to your bladder so you don't have to get up, and it was just not nice. On the 4th day my catheter broke. I knew there was something wrong, I knew it was not working correctly, so when the nurses changed to night shift I just politely asked the lady just to take it out and I will walk to the toilet. Only I'd probably say I'd walk to the toilet knowing that I probably couldn't walk. However, I feel like that's why I had quite a good recovery. Like the doctors when I left were so impressed with my recovery in terms of like how I could walk and like so independently and stuff like that. So lucky enough that my parents rotated, who stayed with me, so I wasn't on my own. I don't think I would have liked it if I was on my own. In terms of my eating, with the medication I was on, I was not hungry. I started to eat more and get more of an appetite towards the end of their time in hospital, from about the 5th day to the 7th. So when I got home, again, the worst thing was I couldn't shower myself. I needed help getting into bed. I couldn't put a pair of socks on. I couldn't get dressed, and I like to be able to do my hair, put a bit of makeup on, just make yourself feel better, and I just couldn't because of my appetite and things like that. I'm quite very slim anyway, and I lost about half a stone easy. It got to a point where I didn't want anyone coming over to see me when people did, because I thought I just looked awful. I would literally just look like skin and bone. So in terms of the medication that I got sent, I got given dihydrocodone, morphine, senna, ibuprofen, paracetamol. That was it. However, I say that was it. I was on 27 tablets a day for about 3 weeks, and then I had to wean myself off the dihydrocodone as it is very addictive. And when starting to come off that, I experienced headaches, dizziness every time I decreased my dosage. 2 weeks later, I went to my GP, doctor's surgery, because at this point I still had a bandage over my scar. So, about the scar. So, out of this whole thing, the scar is the thing that I am the least bothered about, and I think that people are quite shocked about that, especially because we've been a young girl and my scar is the length of my back pretty much. So this is the photo that may be a bit to some people, as this is what it was when I first got my bandage taken off. So as you can tell, it is still bloody and things like that, however it needed air to get to the scar. When I got home that evening, when that got taken off, the thing that I was most scared about was having a shower. And it seems daft to say, however, when your back looks like that and you go underwater, all I was thinking in my head was, what if my back opens? And thinking now, obviously it's not like I've been stitched up and it's fine, but when it looks as raw as that, it looks like it was still healing. So I was so petrified to put my back under the water. If anyone who's watching this is going through anything like this, one thing that I would say is just don't feel that like your emotions that you're feeling aren't normal, because they are. It's normal to have felt nervous, it's normal to have felt scared. The one thing that I would have told myself if I was to have gone through all this again is just not to put as much pressure on yourself to feel like you should feel better straight away, because your body's gone through such a trauma. Like, I've pretty much got a new back. Like, it's surreal. The recovery overall, I'm still recovering. This is 5 months later. I still get aches and pains, things like that. I can't exercise at the moment. Like, I physically can't run. But oh well. I'm acting like I ran anyway. And but yeah, the most rewarding thing about having it was when I saw the x-ray. So I actually saw the x-ray that I'd had after I'd had it done when I was in hospital. This was about the 5th day, and they wheeled me out and they were able to show it me on the computer. And when I saw this, it was such an emotional thing for me, because this has been going on since I was 15, and then so to be able to see that, it just blows my mind how clever some people are. So this is what my back looks like now, and it's just crazy. Like, how can one individual be that smart to be able to realign someone's back and me still be able to function like it's never happened? And when I saw that, I got really emotional, because I just thought, like, that's my back. Like, and when you've been in so much discomfort for like 2 years, for it to then be finally alright, like, it's just such a relief. Like, don't get me wrong, you will, if anyone's going through this, like, you still get pains, like my back still aches and stuff, but like, I'm still in recovery at the moment. I got told it takes a year for full recovery. However, you just take each day as it comes. Each day when I was at home in the recovery, I was getting so much better, like so much better. Every day I was able to walk up and down the stairs. I always made sure as well when I was at home that I'd walk around the house a bit, just so I don't get stiff. But overall, the experience that I went through, I'd never forget, but if anything, it made me a stronger person. This, just view it as like, that is just a visual thing of what you went through, and every time that you see it, or if someone asks you about it, don't shy away from saying what happened, because you were so, I view it as I was, and I am being honest about it, I was so brave through that whole experience. And so if people ask, I'm going to say, because I'm going to be like, yeah, I was brave. And you should give yourself that pat on the back, because I don't think many people would be able to go through it. After all that was my experience and my story on my scoliosis. This whole video was basically just to inform people about it, make people aware, because I do think it's something that people aren't really aware of. A few things to take away from this video. One, if you feel like there's something not wrong with you, go to the doctors, because all they can say is yes or no. And then if they say yeah, great, you know, get it sorted. If they say no, you're fine. Always go and get it checked. Secondly, if you're going through this, don't worry, you'll be fine. Make sure you've got a good support system around you, family, friends. Like I said, I don't think I would be able to have got through it as well as I did without my friends and family. So, on a lighter note, I hope you enjoyed today's video. It is a bit different. If you like these videos, then give this one a big thumbs up. And now, if you guys have any questions on scoliosis or anything like that, I will be sure to leave my social media, my Instagram down below. Just give me a DM and I will be more than happy, or just leave a comment down below and I'll reply to you. Just, yeah. So thank you for watching today's video. If you were new here, make sure you click the subscribe button. We'll see you in the next video.